friends, welcome to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Kylie. I'm so happy to have you. My channel is all about being a young person living with narcolepsy, but we don't just focus on the sleep disorder here. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back to my channel to watch another video. If you haven't yet, I would appreciate it if you would consider subscribing as well as liking this video. Both of those things really help to support my channel and I greatly appreciate it. Side note, this is my second time recording this video, thanks to me accidentally deleting it right when I went to go start editing it. So normally I do my videos inside. So today I took a break from being inside and I came out here to the back porch. So you'll probably hear a little bit of outside noises and you may see our pups running in the background. Today's video in particular is the third episode of the Pregnant with Narcolepsy series. There are little to no studies done on women who have narcolepsy that continue to take their treatment for their narcolepsy during their pregnancy, which is why I decided to create this series to just share my experience. If you haven't yet seen the first two episodes and you like to check those out, you can go to the Pregnant with Narcolepsy playlist and see the first video, which is all about my initial concerns, and the second, which is a summary of my entire pregnancy experience. In today's video, we are discussing my birth story, so I'm going to give you all the details on how it went down for me. If you watched the second episode, you know that we left off on September 8th, which was a Thursday. Now, my due date was September 18th, so I was supposed to work up until the time I gave birth. So let's say if the baby were to come on his due date, I was supposed to work until the 16th of September. However, on the 7th, I went to a doctor's appointment and something just told me, you can't do this anymore. Even though I don't have a super physically demanding job, I just was in pain sitting in that office chair, and when I would walk around the office, I'd have hip pain, and it was just so hard because I was so exhausted on top of having narcolepsy. So it was that afternoon that I reached out to my supervisor and said, hey, today is my last day. I don't know if you can hear this crow out here. It was being very obnoxious. I kind of don't hate it because it's like kind of Halloween vibes. So September 8th was a Thursday. It was my first full day at home for my technical maternity leave. And I spent the day nesting when I know I should have been resting. But you know how it is. You can't help it. You just want to get things done before your baby comes. That evening, my mom came over. She had made chili. You know how it is with chili. You usually have enough to eat it all week, give some to others, freeze some, etc. So she offered to bring some over, and I was totally taking advantage of not having to cook that late in my pregnancy. And the four of us ate chili that night, and in the middle of the night, I suddenly felt like I had used the restroom. And I went, and I was able to go. It was normal, nothing crazy about it. Then I went back to sleep. I wake up probably an hour later with the same stomach pains, like, ooh, gotta go. I go to the restroom again, and I was able to go a second time, and then went back to bed. And then one more time, for a third and final time, I went again, till there was nothing left in my belly. So in the morning, Nate went to work, and I was just still having those pains, like, every 45 minutes or so. It wasn't super frequent. So all of a sudden, I would get up, and I would go sit on the toilet, and nothing would come out because there was nothing left. I would go back to sleep, and then again, 30 to 45 minutes later, I'm feeling that pain again, and I would do the same thing over and over. Finally, I was like, let me just call my doctor's office and see what I can take for my upset stomach. And I'm totally thinking, oh, it's just because of my chili, right? Well, I know I can't take Pepto-Bismol, so I call them, and they're like, well, why don't you just go to the hospital? And I'm like, my doctor told me if it was 5 minutes apart or if your water broke, and neither of those two things were happening. So I was like, are you sure? The nurse I was speaking with suggested that I drink some fluids, lay down, and if the pain doesn't go away, then just go get checked out. The worst thing they could say is go home. So that's what I did. It didn't go away. I called Nate. He came home, picked me up, and we went to the hospital. Side note, I already had my hospital bag packed for like a good month or more, and If you want to know what I packed, you can check out my video that's specifically on that topic. If it's not already, there will be a follow-up video to come for that, which is going to be me sharing what I actually found the most useful at the hospital, as far as what I packed, what was gifted to me, and what the hospital provided me. So I'm going to give you all those details in a video to come soon. If it's out, I will tag it above here. So we get to the hospital. At this point, I was only 1 centimeter dilated, and turns out I was having contractions. You know, they put that little monitor thing up to you, and I was only 38 weeks and 5 days. So typically they told us they don't induce you unless you're at least 39 weeks, unless you have something abnormal in your labs or you're super dilated, which I didn't have either of those two things. So they said, we're going to give you a couple hours. We're going to see if you make any progress. And if you don't, we're going to send you home. And if you do, we'll go from there. Nate goes and gets us lunch, comes back, we eat it, chilling, talking, waiting. And then they check me again, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. So because I dilated 3 centimeters in those 2 hours, they're like, okay, we're going to keep you, which I was so glad, because Nate and I both didn't want to have to go back home and wait 2 more days. And especially if my contractions were happening, like, who wants to go home and sit and deal with that, you know? Not that you always have a choice. My contractions were growing closer and closer together. At one point, they were about 8 minutes apart. Now, as far as epidural, I requested to have my epidural sooner rather than later because I was worried about my cataplexy being triggered while I was, you know, in distress and a lot of emotion during my labor. So for those of you not familiar, you can either check out my Breakdowns of Narcolepsy playlist to find out more about specific symptoms of narcolepsy and what it is. But in a nutshell, cataplexy is a symptom that can accompany narcolepsy, which basically makes you feel like you're weak or like you could just drop to the floor, depending on how severe or mild it is for you, anytime you experience strong emotion or laughter. So, for example, if I'm in labor and you know you're really stressed and you're like worried and there's so much pain and that's a lot of emotion going on, I was worried that my cataplexy would be triggered. Now, I did reach out to people on different groups that I have for narcolepsy on Facebook beforehand to ask if anyone else experienced this or did they do anything about it. And the response was kind of 70-30. 70% of people were like, no, didn't bother me at all. The other 30 were like, well, I just had my doctor do the epidural sooner rather than later, just in case. So that's what I decided to do. I asked the doctor, I said, can I get it now, even though it's not that far in? And they said, yep, sounds good. So they gave me the epidural. They did what was called a butterfly epidural, which I'm not sure how familiar you are with epidurals. I was not familiar at all with them. Typically, you get like one needle or it's in one place. And the way they do the butterfly one is to do 2 on the side of your spine. The doctor that did the epidural told me that it takes the percentage of something bad happening from 8% to 2% when they do the butterfly epidural that way. Now, I will say that was painful. I about passed out. I suddenly felt like I was sweating from head to toe. Nate had ran home and got some stuff for an overnight bag, and my mom was on her way to the hospital, and Nate's mom was there with me. I liked having her there, and also the male nurse that was helping us was so great and helpful. Like, he gave me a pillow to hug on too, but then he stood in front of me and like held me so I didn't move out of the placement they needed me in. And he was just talking me through it, like, breathe, 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 like and you would think like that's not really helpful, but it was so helpful. I was like hurting, I was scared, I was still having contractions that I could feel. And like I said, I suddenly felt like I could pass out, like, whew, from forehead to toe. I felt like warm, like, and they even mentioned something about, wow, you're really sweaty, because I could see it on my back. And trust me, I am not someone that sweats much at all, like at all. Because after the epidural was successfully put in, I lost all my feeling from basically from my breast down. And so I didn't know I was having contractions other than to see it on the monitor, which was great. My mom arrived at the hospital. My doctor came by. He broke my water, which no, I did not feel at all because of the epidural. And then he left. He was gone for about 2 hours, and during that time, I was literally napping, sitting in the hospital bed. everyone was just kind of like, is this girl really napping right now? Yes. I don't know if it was just because the epidural and I really couldn't feel the contractions, or if it was like my narcolepsy really just coming in clutch right then. But yeah, my mom, his mom, and him were all sitting in the room, plus the nurse here and there, and they would be talking, and I would suddenly wake up and be like, guys, I'm trying to nap here. My doctor comes back after that 2 hours, and I had fully dilated even before he got to the hospital. And I guess there's something that they can give you to help induce your labor, something in the IV. Lucky for me, they didn't even need to give me any of this. And I remember the male nurse even joking, saying, some people like to show off. It was just amazing how quickly I went from 1 centimeter to fully dilated, ready to go. Let's do this. And it is not what you think it would be. From what I've heard from stories from family, is that, oh, there's a curtain there if you don't want your husband to see down there. You can close it. There ain't no curtain, or at least in my case, there wasn't. A female nurse had one leg. My doctor said, Nate, grab her other leg, and he did. So they're holding my legs. I'm holding my thighs underneath, and we're literally, I probably pushed for 15 minutes, and out of that 15 minutes, we were mostly looking at the monitor to see when my contractions would start, and that's when I had to push. And like I said, I pushed for about 15 minutes, and then Jackson was here. And my doctor did say in the process, you're about to rip. What every lady wants to hear, right? So he says, you're about to rip, but I'd rather you be in a straight line. So I'm going to cut you. And I was just like, so yes, I had an episiotomy. Once Jackson was born, you know, they have him still in the same room, just on the other side, clean him off, check his vitals, this, that, and the other. And Nate went over there with Jackson, and my mom and his mom stayed with me. He was crying. As soon as he heard Nate's voice, he stopped crying. And we were just like, oh, well, I was busy getting the afterbirth taken out, or whatever you call it, and getting sewn back up. So I didn't get to be there for that little moment, but I heard about it. And it was just really sweet. We did a lot of talking to him when he was in my belly. I would read to him almost every night, and Nate would talk to him before he went to work. When he got home, I would talk to him randomly throughout the day, so I think he recognized our voices for sure. After that, they wanted me to be able to stand up, walk to the bathroom, and pee on my own. I know back in the day they used to care that if you had a bowel movement before you leave, but they no longer care if you do that or not. They're like, can you get up and walk to the bathroom? And my left leg, even though I couldn't feel it, I was still numb. I could lift up my left leg, but my right leg, no. It was like I was using all the mind power to move that right leg, to even just lift it, and it would not lift at all. So she had to basically throw me on this little cart thing and wheel me to the bathroom, and I could not for the life of me pee. Now, eventually they're like, okay, we just gotta go, move you to the mommy and me postpartum room. So now we're in the postpartum mommy and me room. Now I still haven't urinated at this point. There's now a nurse for Jackson and a nurse for me, taking my vitals and his and all this other stuff. Now all of a sudden, it was probably a couple hours after that, I looked down at my belly, and I'm not kidding you when I say that really close to my pelvic bone, if this is my pelvic bone and here's the top of me, there was a bubble. And it was at the end of my belly, like the bottom, like right before my pelvic bone. And it literally looked like a little balloon that was kind of like halfway blown up. And it hurt so bad. Now, mind you, I'm someone that has a pretty high pain tolerance, but this hurt so bad. And I waited too, because I was just like, oh, it might pass or whatever. Well, then it wasn't. It was really bad. So I called the nurse on the little nurse line. Long story short, it took me calling them 3 times and finally not being so nice, and while I was crying my eyes out, to get them to come over there, and gave me a Vicodin, and they were like, just keep trying to pee. So I did. I went to the bathroom so many times, could not get anything out. Finally, I was able to get it out. And it wasn't just urine, it's also IV fluids from earlier in the day. So there was a lot in there. That's why I was in so much pain. Other than that, I was perfectly healthy. Jackson was perfectly healthy. He was born 5 pounds, 12 ounces around 7:30 in the evening. honestly, everything went way more perfect than I thought it was going to go because I had such a good pregnancy that I kind of had this thing in the back of my mind like, my luck's going to run out here sometime. Luckily, it didn't. Everything went really well. So I'm very, very thankful for that. Now, I will say, we were in the hospital as per usual for 48 hours after that. Then we went home during the middle of a thunderstorm. Now, this was not our last time going to the hospital with Jackson. But if you want to know more about his first month of life, how it was for us to be brand new parents, having a newborn that had to go back to the hospital, and some of the other challenges we had to overcome just in that first 30 days, stay tuned for my next video. It will change from pregnant with narcolepsy to parenting with narcolepsy, but it'll basically just be like a 1 month update on being a parent and having a newborn for our very first time. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. That does help me as my channel is very young and growing. And other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.